I'd long wondered why the beautiful young Kitty O'Toole was engaged to a man more than twice her age. Articles I found recently seem to have cleared up the mystery of the engagement, but they haven't gone far to clearing up the mystery of her death. This is Christina with the Sisyphean Journal, and today is February 18th. At 2 p.m. on February 18th of 1883, 28-year-old Irish immigrant Kitty O'Toole died at the offices of Dr. Charles H. Orton, her betrothed, in Milwaukee. Dr. Orton was about 60 years of age and had been widowed about 6 months earlier. He'd once been a reputable physician active in local politics, but his reputation had deteriorated in recent years. In 1876, he was indicted for selling liquor without a license. He was arrested later that year for counterfeiting and fled to try to avoid prosecution, thus forfeiting a $2,500 bail, which was quite a bit of money. He was later located the next year at Fort Wayne, Indiana, where he was practicing medicine under the name C.C. Chambers. They brought him back to Milwaukee to stand trial on the counterfeiting charges, and he spent a year in prison. So, what was Kitty doing dead at the home where he was practicing medicine in Milwaukee? Kitty's body was removed to the home of her aunt, Mrs. Dolan, where her family wanted to prepare her for burial. They laid her out in a bed in the front room. But the neighbors, Dr. Orton's neighbors and Mrs. Dolan's neighbors, found the whole circumstance just a little fishy, and they insisted that the authorities investigate. Now, for some reason, the authorities went to Kitty's aunt's house, and they didn't separate people. They had them in the same room while they were talking to them. Now, Dr. Orton told the authorities that Kitty had long suffered from epilepsy, had told him that she knew eventually she was going to die from one of her epileptic fits, and that she had instructed him if she was ever taken by one of her epileptic fits that he was to throw water in her face to bring her around. Now, while the police were talking to Dr. Orton, Mrs. Dolan went and fetched Kitty's brother-in-law. He started telling the authorities that Kitty had been ailing for a long time. Sometimes she'd take to her bed, sometimes she'd be up and about and seemed very active. Mrs. Dolan told him he should keep his mouth shut and let people find things out rather than him telling them things. So, it kind of raises questions of what was going on in Mrs. Dolan's mind. Over the protests of Kitty's aunt, Doctors Keston and Connell insisted on an autopsy and removed Kitty's body from the home. Now, before the autopsy results were released, Dr. Orton testified before the coroner's jury. I'm going to read what he said. Hard to say how long I have known the girl, but probably for 10 or 15 years. She died at my office on Sunday afternoon after 2 o'clock. I boarded at the Metropolitan Hotel. Kitty waited on me, and I learned to like her as a daughter. My wife lived at the hotel with me. I was sent for several times to attend her when she had epileptic fits. About 2 months ago, she called at my office and said she had sleepless nights, saw balls of fire in the air, and was afraid she would die. She said that at St. Paul she was in a Catholic hospital and they had treated her for vertigo. I prescribed medicine for her, and we became intimate and engaged. I'm not sure that people of that time, 1883, would have the same connotations of the word intimate that we have. I don't think he was confessing to a physically intimate relationship. She said her aunt on Prospect Avenue wanted her to live with her, but she was notable to work and was afraid she would die as she would be left alone considerable. A roundabout way of saying that Kitty's aunt was at work a lot and Kitty feared being left at the house by herself. She then went to live on Lisbon Plank Road about 4 miles from the city with her brother, Mike O'Toole, who kept a tavern and saloon. They had no suitable room for her there, and I furnished rooms for her. She grew worse, and I called to see her daily, or as I thought her health required. One night I watched with her all night, and she was delirious. At last they thought it looked bad for me to be keeping her in my room, so we decided to get married, although I told her my good wife had been dead but a short time. Dr. Orton's wife had been dead, I think, about 6 months at that point. We talked over church matters, and I said I was willing to be married in the Catholic Church. The trouble of its being Lent then arose, but Mr. Allwell of a town, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name, her brother-in-law procured a special dispensation. I took Kittie to my office with all her effects because we were going to go to the town I can't pronounce directly after being married. So Kittie's belongings were at his home, all gathered up in a trunk as if they were ready to go to be married. Now, Orton said that on February 18th, he'd left Kittie in good spirits while he went to run an errand just across the street. He came back about 10 minutes later and found her in the throes of a severe seizure. He, for some reason, also said he thought she was suffering from some kind of poisoning, which would be odd because there was no poison known to be in the vicinity, and Kittie suffered epileptic fits. Why would he think poisoning? I worked over the girl constantly until the arrival of Dr. Martin. Would blow my breath into her body, which she would eject with a gurgling sound. When Dr. Martin came in, he said it was no use to do anything more as the poor girl was dead. So 3 local doctors performed an autopsy, and they removed Kittie's stomach and sent it to a chemist to check for poison. She did have a disease that was affecting her heart valves, but the doctors didn't believe that that alone would be enough to kill her. And they also found evidence that she had been pregnant, and the news coverage said something like her womb showed signs of rough usage and didn't go into detail, but it makes it pretty plain that there must have been some kind of signs of instrumentation causing an abortion. The postmortem examination also found that she had edema of the lungs, and the doctors thought that this had been caused by the abortion. The coroner's jury found Orton culpable for 2 murders, that of Kittie and of her unborn baby. And Orton was eventually charged with manslaughter in Kittie's death. Now, during the period he was involved in counterfeiting, he had amassed a fortune of around $40,000. And before he went to prison, he'd put that money in his wife's name. When she died, their daughter inherited it. And of course, she was very easily able to bail her father out of prison. Now, even after all the investigations, all the media coverage, and the fact that Dr. Orton's reputation had gone to hell in a handbasket over recent years, in April, a municipal court judge suddenly dismissed all of the charges, saying that there had been no testimony indicating that an abortion had been performed. So I don't know what happened at that point. You can like, share, subscribe, and I can try to get hold of the original documents. There's a couple of possibilities. One is that Dr. Orton's money was very helpful to him. There's the possibility that some of his old connections from before he started backsliding were of service to him. It might be that Kittie's family, who, as you recall, were pretty dead set against any kind of investigation into her death, knew something about an abortion and wanted to keep it on the down low. And the judge may well have just dropped everything to benefit them. We'll probably never know. We do know that Dr. Orton was not lonely for long. In August, he married a young woman named Kate Martin in Chicago. So there's the mystery of the death of Kittie O'Toole.